Hello, my students. Welcome back to the lessons on professionalism in interpreting and translation. Today, we are going to talk about another type of editing. It is structural editing in module number 5. Okay, let's go. Texts have two types of structures: conceptual structures and physical structure. An example of the conceptual structure would be an argument structure where we can have the presentation of the problem, the tentative solutions, arguments for, arguments against, and conclusion. An example of the second type of physical structure would be parts of an article, like the title, the summary, section head, sequence of paragraphs, insert a table, next section head, and so on. The structural editor's job is to have the reader follow the conceptual structure by making adjustments in the physical structure. This may involve large-scale work, reordering paragraphs or even sections and larger units. However, in this module, we will be concerned with smaller scale changes because that is the kind of what the translator most often need to do. And on the screen you can see the main ideas that will be discussed in our lesson today. Firstly, I want to talk about the physical structure of a text, and then the problem with the prose, the problems with the headings, and the last one is structural editing during translation. Okay, now let's focus on the very first discussions on physical structure of a text. Documents typically have several distinct structural parts. First, prose, or a continuous sequence of sentences and paragraphs. Greetings in a text may be clickable, that is, linked electronically to other parts of the text or even to other texts. Second, headings, often hierarchical and sometimes numbered. Chapter titles, section heads, subsection heads, and so on. The third one is list, or the main types point form list, which may be numbered or lettered or bulleted like the list you are reading, you are seeing on the screen. And tables. A table is a series of parallel lists, usually called columns. A table's boxes may themselves contain prose sequences. There may be locator lists to have readers move to specific places within the document. The table contains at the front and one or more alphabetical indexes at the back, listing topics dealt with in the document, names of people mentioned, and the like. Finally, there may be linking lists to help readers move outward toward other relevant words, a list of references or words referred to in the document, sometimes a separate list of readings or words of interest on the subject of the document. And the next structural part of a document is the graphics, like diagrams, photographs, drawings, maps, embedded videos, and other such entities, usually referred to in the consecutive prose. These are often mixed or intermixed with the consecutive prose, but sometimes they are located in a separate part of the document, devoted specifically to graphics. And the last structural part of a document is isolated items, like the footnotes, endnotes, captions of graphics and tables, or labels on diagrams, etc. In the remaining sections of these modules, we will look at several problems that may arise with the prose and the headings only. The first two here will be the focus of modules number 5. So that is also the sections 5.2 here, problems with prose. There are a lot of problems with the prose. that you can see on the screen. Firstly, it is missing markers. Paragraph begins like there are four factors that lead to parolee to reoffense. First, blah blah. The reader continues and realizes a few paragraphs later that he is now reading about the second factor. The writer forgot to insert the important structural marker second. A related error is a sequence like there are four factors: first, second, third, lastly, finally. When the writer had completed her rather lengthy discussions of the fourth factor, she thought of a further factor meriting mention. Having lost track of the numbering, however, she introduced her discussion with finally. So the editor will make the required changes. There are five factors, not four. The second one is unfulfilled announcements. For example, the writers announce, let us first look at the arguments in favor of this view and then at the arguments against, and then a couple of pages later the arguments in favor terminate, and so does the section. The author moves to another matter and the arguments against appear 10 or 15 pages later in another section of the document. Then the editor would have to either amend the introductory sentence. Here, we will look at arguments in favor. The argument against will be discussed in section 9, or else move the material from section 9 back to the earlier section. So we say that is a kind of unfulfilled announcement. Another is the empty backwards references. In the fourth paragraph of the text, there is a reference to this commentary, but no commentary has been mentioned in the text so far. In the first, second, and third paragraphs, perhaps there used to be such a reference, but it was deleted. So the editor should amend a commentary, not this commentary. First, backward or forward references. So for the third one, no backward references are found, right? But in the fourth cases here, there are references backward and forward, however, they are false. For example, a sentence refers the reader to page 27 for more information on the matter under discussion, but that page contains no such additional information. The information in question is in the first paragraph on page 28. That is because the material is being circulated as a document, and some factors such as a large before font or wider margins at the reader's end result in the material appearing on page 28 rather than page 27 or on screen or on a printout. So the solution here for you is to remove page number references, refer instead to section numbers if any, or to headings or subheadings. This practice is also wise for documents that will be printed, since at the time of editing there may be no way of knowing the page number on which a passage will appear, right? So to be safe, refer to the title, the headings, or the subheadings, not the page number. Another is a kind of unexplained acronyms. For example, you see some acronyms like NBRS, WEF. However, you don't see anywhere where the writer or the translator give you a full words of these acronyms. We say unexplained acronyms. So these are the words that wonders the readers, or the reader may wonder. Okay. So there are two solutions. First, spell out the acronym on the first occurrence. Okay. When you first write in your document, spell out the acronym. Or the second solution is to have a kind of a list of acronyms for ready reference. Append a list of acronyms for ready reference. Another is references to graphics and tables. The editor will often need to eliminate expressions like the following table or the chart opposite because page designers will want to have flexibility in placing graphics and tables. Instead, tables and graphics should be numbered and referred to in the consecutive rows by those numbers, like table 14 shows or as seen in figure 5. Another problem is a kind of poor paragraphing. Paragraph divisions are very important markers that guide the reader through the text structure. Suppose you find a very long paragraph followed by a rather short one. On inspection of the content, you notice that the last third of a long paragraph discusses the same topic as the short paragraph. So the writer has working along decided that the paragraph was getting too long and simply started a new one at an arbitrary point. You should divide the long paragraph at the point where the topic changes and then enjoy the short paragraph to a new second paragraph. Okay, like this, quite independently of the unity of a paragraph content, the length of paragraphs appears to have an effect on ease of reading. The readers who are less educated or less knowledgeable about the text subject matter will find shorter paragraphs easier to read and to handle. Okay, and on the other hand, a long sequence of short paragraphs is not optimal, it's not good. Rather than a mixture of long and short paragraphs appears to be best. So ideally, the length of paragraph should be correlated with the topic. If a short paragraph, for example, to sum up at the end of one phase of an argument. However, there are no natural places to end paragraphs. It is more a matter of what the writer wants the reader to consider as going together. Okay, so you have to be flexible in these cases. Now I want to walk you to the problems with headings. The first one is misconceived headings. That is when the heading of a subsection reads like implementation of the guidelines, but the material in the body of the subsection only mentions the guidelines in passing at the outset and then moves off onto some other topic. The writer wrote the heading, then got off topic and forgot to amend the heading to suit the section. So it is when the headings and the prose and the headings don't match. The second problem is when the heading system confused the reader. On one page, the main headings are numbered and bolded while the subheadings are indented and underlined. However, 2 pages later, a main heading has been indented and a subheading has been italicized. Consistency in the positioning, numbering, lettering, and typography, bolding, underlining, and italicizing of the headings is important because these features are visual signals of the structure of an argument. The readers may also be confused by many layered systems of the headings, one with subheadings and sub-subheadings. Such a system is appropriate for manuals and other documents that are not meant to be read from start to finish because it assists quick referencing. However, if you, as an author, have used an elaborate system in a document which is not a manual, you should try to reduce the number of layers in an article or chapter to 1 or 2 layers only. Also, signal these layers by position and formatting rather than by numbers or letters unless the style sheet for a publication require you to do so. So for heading system, using the what, the position, the formatting, not the numbers or letters, and try to minimize the number of layers for the subheadings. Another problem is the kind of lack of subheadings. It is easier to read a text in which subheadings appear every few paragraphs. Subheadings signal a change of topic and also remind the reader of the structure of an argument. We are now moving on to the next factor in the list, which appears a few pages back. The reader is relieved of the task of trying to relate the first sentence of a new paragraph to what precedes. The subheading makes the relationship explicit. Another problem is errors in numbering. As a result of the author's self-editing work, chapters or sections may be misnumbered. For example, section 6.2 may be followed by section 6.4, not 6.3, or section 6 may be followed by another section 6. So we say 6 errors in numbering. And the next problem with headings is headings that do not match the table of contents. This one is quite popular, right? If the numbering of headings within the consecutive prose differs from the numbering in the table of contents that you have done automatically, or if the wording of a heading differs significantly from the table of contents wording, the reader may be misled or become confused. Ideally, the writer has used the WordProfessor automatic table of content generator, which makes it easy to change the table when changes are made in the body of the text. However, many people find this utility hard to use. If the writer hasn't used it, then you as the editor must check that the section 6.7 mentioned in the table of contents really exists, that it does indeed start on page 24, and that it is in fact entitled How to Fire Employees, not the human aspect of downsizing. The table of contents should be checked after all other editing work is complete. So, I hope that you can make a checklist for yourself now by summing up all of the subheadings in section 5.2 and 5.3, and you have now a very long checklist to do with the structural editing, right? And now let's look at the last part, structural editing during translation. Some people who new to translation, we say maybe new translator, often think the structure of the text has already been created by the source text author, and that there is therefore no work for them to do in this respect. However, it is not the case. During translation, you may sometimes find that you need to make sure structural adjustments like change the order of sentences, maybe to bring out the arguments, or change the paragraph or sentence divisions, or turn to a point from list into consecutive or vice versa. So a lot of changes for the structure, right? The reason may be poor writing in the source text, or simply different rhetorical habits in the target language. For example, English tends to avoid the rather lengthy headings sometimes seen in French writing or Vietnamese writing. So as the reviser, you might replace a lengthy translated heading with a 2 or 3 word heading that is appropriate for the section that follows, just to meet the rhetorical habits in the target language. And you have to depend on the target genre or readership as well. Depend on the target language genre or readership. Okay, so what does that mean? The case of paragraphing is very of special interest since many people ignore this. The client sometimes asks to have the paragraphing of the source text imitated, but that is not always advisable. Paragraphing habits may differ in the corresponding target language genre. For example, if you are translating English newspaper articles for a corporate or ministerial clipping service, you may want to eliminate the one-sentence paragraphs or the paragraphs that just contain one sentence, okay, which are very common in English journalism. And conversely, if the translating you a news story from another language into English for publication in a newspaper, then you may want to split long paragraphs and even create some one-sentence paragraphs. You know that for English news or English journal, sometimes one sentence is one paragraph. However, that is not the case in other language. So when you want to be structural editing, you should bear this one in mind. So that's all for now for the discussions on structural editing. Thank you for joining my lesson. I hope that you can understand well my lesson and you can go smoothly from start to finish. Thank you and goodbye.